Next on the news.
Manhattan's financial district, home to the world's largest stock exchange and hundreds of financial institutions, is now being known for something else.
They turned our life a crime. Even these homeless people, violent. They're very violent.
Trendy FDNY turned threatening. And the floodwaters are receding, but the death toll is rising. We are on the ground in Florida with exclusive coverage, how the church is helping people get back on their feet. Plus, President Biden in Puerto Rico, his latest move to help the island nation that keeps getting hit. And this. Bocelli at the Vatican, opening up for St. Peter. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now.
People who commit crime don't feel that there's a consequence for it.
Once a New York City hotspot, the financial district is quickly becoming a hot mess. On average, it could cost you nearly $4,000 for an apartment there, and that number just keeps rising. But here's what's also on the uptick: robbery, rape, and rampant drug use. Currents News' Jessica Easthope was in FDNY this morning and says the trendy has turned threatening. Jess.
Christine, whether they've lived there for a few years or a few decades, everyone says the same thing. It's not what it used to be. One of the most well-known neighborhoods in the country has become a hotbed for crime and homelessness, and that's not just an opinion, it's fact. Harold Gaffney has seen the worst of what human beings can do to each other. He was a court officer and a court clerk for 36 years, but he's never seen the city this bad.
There used to be a time when you had the concept of the crime-busting DA. But that doesn't exist anymore.
According to the NYPD, major crimes in the financial district are up 50% this year, compared to the rest of the city, where they're up 33%. The first precinct, which covers the area, is reporting burglary is up 70%, robbery up 15%, felony assault up 16%, and rape up 55%.
People who commit crime don't feel that there's a consequence for it. But if a person is arrested and is back on the street in 24 hours, well, you can have all the arrest statistics you want.
Harold says even during his 2-block walk to church at Our Lady of Victory in the heart of the financial district, he feels unsafe.
A lot of people who commit crimes feel empowered. Hey, let me do what I want. And that's one of the problems.
Harold points to the lack of city resources designated to help homeless on the streets as one origin of the recent crime spike. And he's not the only one.
And these homeless people, violent. They're very violent.
Eve Smith is a baby nurse who walks the streets of the financial district every day, and almost always with children.
I saw this homeless man. He was raging violent. And he was attacking people that was passing by. They fear for their lives.
People here say above ground, the crime is spread out and sometimes masked by the skyscrapers and professional feel of the financial hub. But below ground, it's harder to escape.
I was almost at my stop here, and a homeless guy actually sat down next to me, and he was screaming and throwing donuts at people, and I was like, and smoking a cigarette right next to me.
Jessica Levy is recently back in her native New York after living abroad. She said people warned her about the aggressive crime, but she didn't realize the magnitude of the problem until she saw it for herself.
After leaving for nearly 3 years and coming back, New York feels like a slightly different place now.
The NYPD has said it does not keep track of random or unprovoked attacks. However, the department is reporting a spike in 911 calls involving emotionally disturbed people. Christine, there are roughly 500 a day.
Wow, Jess, let's talk about some of these crimes. We've seen people randomly slashed and robbed recently, right?
Yeah, a Queens woman slashed an 82-year-old doorman in the face and the head before blinding him with bear spray in September. And then a 19-year-old slashed and robbed an 84-year-old man. That happened in August. A man unsuccessfully tried to steal a woman's French bulldog. If you remember that story, during in the revolving door of that building, she slammed her head. That was before that. There was more crime in April. A man swiped a cash register from an Italian restaurant on Nassau Street. You know, that's just a sample size. That's just a sample, a glimpse of the crime that we've been seeing in the financial district.
Right, and according to police, there's been a lot of drug deals there also. What are you hearing from the people there in that neighborhood?
Yeah, Christine, people are saying that drugs are motivating all of this. Some people are blaming drugs on all of this crime that we've been having. And it's not just crime involving drugs, it's everything. You know, the First Precinct is reporting that 28%, arrests are up 28% this year alone, and that robberies up 12%, 43% grand larceny, burglary is up 100%.
Wow. All right, Jess, it's a story that isn't going away anytime soon until there's some changes made. We'll check back in with you on this. It's too late now for the city to do anything to save Allison Russo Elling. Today is the wake for the 61-year-old FDNY EMT lieutenant who was killed last Thursday simply buying a sandwich in Astoria. In an unprovoked attack, a man stabbed her during her lunch break. The nearly 25-year veteran of the fire department was also a 9/11 first responder. FDNY chaplain Monsignor Jamie Gigantiello was at the hospital the night she died.
Obviously, the person who did this to Allison was mentally disturbed, and mental illness is a big issue, and it has to be addressed. And we have to take everything into account, but also we have to keep our streets safe.
A suspect has been arrested in connection to Russo Elling's death. Police announcing Friday that 34-year-old Peter Zisopoulos now faces a murder charge. The late lieutenant was just months away from retirement. Her funeral will take place Wednesday at the Tillis Center for Performing Arts in Nassau County. She was lovingly known as the mother of her station. Also tonight, neighborhoods turn to islands, roofs turn to rafts.
We don't know our future because we don't know, can we rebuild?
The hurricane is gone, but the water and the worries are not. Tonight on Currents News, Ian's destruction continues. Communities across Florida are beginning the task of rebuilding as the search for survivors continues. The death toll, now at least 100 people, continues to climb. And Governor Ron DeSantis says the search and rescue effort is the largest since the 9/11 attacks. Days after Hurricane Ian ripped a deadly path through Florida, residents are left with the daunting task of picking up the pieces that are left behind.
I haven't seen anything like this, and I live in Southwest Cape, and my house got creamed, and it's a new house. Built to code and all that good stuff.
But where and how do they start? Some communities still don't even have the basics like power or running water. Not to mention many local stores and businesses where they could have purchased supplies or hired services have also been damaged or destroyed.
Yeah, there's no power and there's no water there, so that's the concern. I don't know what the government is able to do in Arcadia. I hope that they've got supplies there.
Catholic Charities in the Diocese of St. Petersburg tweeted out this picture showing damage to the San Jose mission. Trees fell on the residential community, which provides housing for low-income families. And then there are those who face additional cleanup challenges. Their homes cut off when bridges were washed away in the storm or roads were swamped.
They're stuck on islands, either man-made islands that have been there for some time that are surrounded by water, but more importantly, those are areas that weren't islands before, and now they are surrounded by water.
Search and rescue efforts are ongoing. The governor's office says more than 1,600 people have been rescued since last week, and it will take months, if not years, for these hard-hit communities to rebuild.
We don't know our future because we don't know, can we rebuild?
Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
After his Sunday Angelus, Pope Francis prayed for the victims of Hurricane Ian.
I'm close to all those suffering and the victims, and for all those showing solidarity.
Because of structural damage caused by the hurricane, Florida Power and Light says it could be months before some residents and businesses in the hardest hit areas get their power restored. John Lavenberg, national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, just landed in Tampa. He joins us now. Hi, John.
Hi, Christine.
So, John, we know thousands of flights were canceled before the hurricane even hit, and because of power and water outages, airports in the disaster zone still haven't opened. Tell us about your experience traveling.
Yeah, Christine. So, what I can say, I'm actually calling you right from the Tampa International Airport. I got in about an hour ago, I would say, and to be honest, I had no problems whatsoever. I was a little concerned when I got to LaGuardia and the plane to get down here didn't show up till about 10 minutes before takeoff. But once it arrived, got on, everything went smoothly. So nothing really, Tampa International looks normal. Nothing really changed, it looks like here.
All right, that's good news. Now, many people are still trying to get in touch with their families there. You managed to speak with Bishop Frank Duane of the Diocese of Venice. What did he tell you about the damage to churches and schools there?
So, Christine, starting with the schools, he said there are 2 schools that were heavily damaged by the storm. And he said early this week and over the weekend, they're going to be assessing that damage to see how soon they can get back in, how they can reconfigure things to get students back in the classroom and things like that. So a lot still up in the air with the schools, those 2 schools, about when they're going to get back in. As for the parishes, it's a little more complicated. There are 3 parishes that that Bishop Duane and the diocese really pointed out to me as being effective. The one in Sanibel Island, which we all know was hit hard. He said he's got conflicting reports, but right now it looks like that church was pretty much destroyed. He said another in Fort Myers was also very heavily damaged. And then one in Northport, he didn't say how extensive the damage was to the church, but he said that community was hit very hard. Governor DeSantis talking about the record number of standing water that's still there today. So those are 3 places that they're really taking a hard look at right now.
You're set to see some damage today. You're about to make your way down south. Can you tell us what's on your agenda?
So tomorrow I'll be tagging along with Catholic Charities for the Diocese of Venice, tagging along on their operation as they look to help people however they can. Normal things that Catholic Charities always tries to do in these types of situations, meeting those essential needs, getting that essential support to people that were most impacted. So that's what I'll be doing tomorrow. And I also intend to speak to the pastor and hopefully take a trip down to Northport. As I mentioned, a place with the most standing water left after Hurricane Ian. So I'll be taking a trip down there, seeing what the devastation is and how the pastor there at that church is faring.
All right, John Lavenberg, national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux. Stay safe. We'll check back in with you tomorrow.
Thank you, Christine.
Be sure to stay with Currents News. We will be checking in with John all week. Tomorrow, he's heading to Northport, the community that has seen the worst standing water in Florida. Floods there rose more than 12 feet. Now the church is helping to pick up the pieces. That's tomorrow on Currents News. With Ian's death toll rising and hundreds of thousands of people still without power, the federal government is vowing to unleash a massive amount of federal disaster aid. But just how much? That we don't know yet. In the meantime, the Diocese of Brooklyn is mobilizing. They're asking New Yorkers to give what they can. Just make a check payable to the Compostela Fund of the RC Diocese of Brooklyn and mail it to Diocesan Finance Office, 310 Prospect Park West, Brooklyn, New York, 11215. Contributions will then be divvied up to not only go to Florida, but other parts of the United States, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. There are reports tonight that new arrivals in New York City are actually being bused to Florida now to help with recovery work. Immigrants were seen piling into vans in Queens over the weekend, and they said they were offered $15 an hour plus overtime to head down south. No word yet on who exactly their employer is.
We dedicate this statue of the Holy Family. We ask their...
Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, rain didn't stop a celebration. Bishop Robert Brennan marked Respect Life Sunday by blessing a new statue that came all the way from Italy. The ceremony took place at St. Bernard Parish in Mill Basin. The sculpture depicting baby Jesus in the Blessed Mother's arms as Joseph protects them was donated by a Catholic hoping to honor his late grandparents. And they are members of the family, too. It's that time of year again. The blessing of the animals is taking place all around the diocese. Let's just take a moment to look at these guys. So cute. The annual tradition is in honor of the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals. We saw some dogs and cats and even some feathered friends. Big, small, fluffy, or furry, all the animals received a blessing and a small sprinkling of holy water. There's a lot more news headed your way. President Biden surveying the hurricane damage in Puerto Rico and promising money to help the island rebuild.
We came here in person to show that we're with you.
Plus, Pope Francis is pleading for an end to the war in Ukraine. His message to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Bocelli lending his voice to kick off a new project in Rome, which uses art to evangelize. weeks later and still no power in Puerto Rico. More than 100,000 anxiously waiting for the lights to turn on. And some communities still waiting for aid. Caritas leading the efforts on the island, delivering hundreds of boxes of food and water. But the president did touch down Monday morning in Ponce. He said Puerto Rico hasn't been taken care of, so he announced more than $60 million in funding for future storms. Hurricane Fiona's death toll stands at 25, but experts fear it could be much higher, especially since some of the most devastated regions are still inaccessible because of washed away roads and mudslides. While in Ponce, President Biden surveyed the damage and was briefed on the current recovery efforts.
Ever since the hurricane struck, Jill and I have had people in Puerto Rico on our minds and in our prayers. We came here in person to show that we're with you. All of America is with you as you receive and recover and rebuild.
The Bidens also met with families whose homes were damaged by the storm and helped to assemble care packages. The school bell rang for the Supreme Court today, opening up a new term. Now the court is officially in session, this time with a new justice on the bench. Ketanji Brown Jackson kicked off her new role as Associate Justice Friday, once again taking the oath to serve on the Supreme Court during her investiture ceremony. She's now hitting the ground running as the High Court added 9 cases to its docket, 2 of which involve the future of internet speech. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are making headway in their war against Russia. In an announcement over the weekend, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said they have recaptured a string of towns along the southern province of Kherson and seized a strategic city in Donetsk. 2 regions are part of the 4 territories Russian President Vladimir Putin annexed on Friday. In response to the Kremlin, Pope Francis made a special appeal for peace, directly calling on Putin to respect life.
Il mio appello si rivolge innanzitutto al Presidente della Federazione Russa, supplicandolo di fermare, anche per amore del suo popolo, questa spirale di violenza e di morte.
The Holy Father also reached out to Ukraine's president, asking him to be open to any peace proposals that could be presented to him. Pope Francis is also praying for Indonesia after a sports stadium disaster. A stampede at a soccer stadium there killed at least 125 people Saturday. Panic spread throughout the stadium, thousands surging towards the exits after police tear gassed the crowd, attempting to quell the hundreds of angry fans who stormed the pitch. The incident ranks among the deadliest riots in soccer history, with at least 32 of the victims being children. And with Indonesia set to host next year's FIFA Under-20 World Cup, there's now global scrutiny on the country. Still to come on Currents News, she walked away from a successful career and says God led the way.
As long as you're looking at it from a place of gratitude, you can really see how God was there for you, even when you didn't realize it.
Former Fox News anchor Patty Ann Brown joins us to talk about her new book, which is rooted in faith. And Andrea Bocelli wows the crowd at the premiere of a film, one you won't see at the theater. She is a daughter of the Diocese of Brooklyn, educated in its Catholic schools, who went on to become a nationally recognized journalist, delivering the news on Fox News Channel, MSNBC, and other networks. Now she's getting personal in a memoir called Write Your Own Story: How I Took Control by Letting Go. Author and former news anchor Patty Ann Brown joins us now in studio to give us a sneak peek. Hi, Patty Ann. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start off by reading a quote from your book. You wrote, "Trust in a higher power is the underlying theme of this book. I didn't necessarily understand that when I started writing." So from what I read, you set about writing, your memoir, your memories, so you didn't forget them. How did faith come in?
It's so cliched, but the old footprints in the sand where, you thought maybe God abandoned you, but actually he was carrying you. When you look back on your life, I think about so many things that seemed bad at the time, like when I got scarlet fever, which ended up leading to something good, which you probably read in the book. And other times I got let go from a job, which turned out to be a great thing. And at the time, these were terrible things, but I look back and those led to wonderful things in my life. And there's a lot of serendipity in the book. I think when you go back, and I think everyone should write a memoir, because you go back and you look at things and you see them differently. And as long as you're looking at it from a place of gratitude, you can really see how God was there for you, even when you didn't realize it.
Yeah, he always has a plan, right? And I know you also, wrote about this in your book, which I have here. You wrote about the really scary time when your son was born prematurely. In your book, you talk about how he was baptized in the hospital, and you believe that saved his life. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment?
Yeah, my son was born at just 29 weeks. He weighed only 2 pounds, and he was in the ICU, and he was clinging to life every day. And on day 16, he had a code blue. It was very dramatic. We were sent out of the room, my husband and me, and I mean, we were crying. We were calling our parents. We were saying, "Everybody, please pray." He was purple before we left. There were no signs of life. They just doctors just scrambling, and we prayed and prayed. And then my husband said, "I have to go in and baptize him." And now my husband is a doctor. He's a pediatrician. He had actually done rotations in that hospital, and I thought, my God, now even Mike believes he's going to die. So he went in, baptized him, came out, and I was like, "Is he any better?" And he's like, "No, there's no signs of life." And then just a short time after that, this doctor came out and said, "He's back." What? And it was amazing. And we said, "Can we see him?" We went in. He was pink. He was on a ventilator. They had been trying to get a ventilator down his throat. He was so tiny, and they hadn't been able to do it. But after the baptism, they succeeded in getting the tube down his throat. And,
unbelievable.
And he's 17 now, and he's doing great.
And he's healthy, and that's wonderful, and prayers work. Patty Ann Brown, author of Write Your Own Story. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and if you'd like to get a copy of the book, Write Your Own Story, How I Took Control by Letting Go by Patty Ann Brown, it's available for purchase on Amazon. And finally, a performance for the ages. The Vatican honored the arts Sunday night with a special guest for their new light display. Italian tenor Andrea Bocelli was the guest of honor at the Holy See's movie premiere. His performance of Ave Maria kicked off a new video display about the life of St. Peter, projected onto the most famous church in the world. During the first 2 weeks of October, the video will be shown in Italian with English subtitles on St. Peter's Basilica every 15 minutes from 9 to 11 at night. Looks amazing. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you now with more from Andrea Bocelli's performance of Ave Maria. Hope to see you again next time.